See if I can move to slideshow. Um, so I just wanted to, I think there are three big tips for interviewing. Be prepared, be professional, and be yourself. And I think when we think about these, chunking these into categories, being prepared means one, researching the company, really um, do your diligence, do your homework, get on the Google machine and make sure you go to the company website, go to LinkedIn, understand the company's values and culture, see what you can find on Glassdoor, sometimes is a really great resource. Family and friends that worked there, use your LinkedIn network to see who has worked at a company you're interested in. Make sure you know what they were most notably in the news for. I think all of that makes you a richer candidate because you can bring that into the interview itself. Um, Practice interviewing. One of my least favorite things to do in the world is role play. But I will say for interviewing, practice saying it to yourself, practice with an interviewing partner or pair is really will really kind of help you get the the nerves out, the wiggles out of your interview. Um, have your pitch ready, say it to yourself in a mirror, see how you respond. um, the next and what we're going to focus the latter half of this conversation on is using the star method. So I will go into that further, but it is really laying out your interview answers in the star method, which is situation, task, action, and result. And so we will go into that further. I would really focus on being concise, um, focus on having kind of a pithy response, avoid rambling, avoid the off-topic tangents that are pitfalls for interviews. Um, Next is be professional. And this is all, oh, sorry, one more. Prepare questions. So sorry to jump back. When you research your company, there are some obvious questions that'll come up when you're looking at the job description and you want to know, what does this mean in the job description? Have questions prepared. Interviewers love when you interview them back. And so have 10 questions you could ask. You might only get to two or three, but have 10 questions in your pocket that you can ask the interviewers. They really love to engage and have a two-way conversation. They are proud to work there. They're proud of the job they're hiring for. They want to actually be kind of engaged in that way as well. Be professional. I think some of this is obvious, but it does bear repeating. Dress appropriately. Usually, I would say overdress for the role that you're interviewing. Business attire is always welcome in an interview, unless you know for sure you're going to a tech firm and they wear flip-flops and shorts. Even then, I would still wear, business casual. Make sure you have on a collared shirt, a dress, khaki pants, button-down shirt, those sorts of things for an interview. Use professional language. I would really avoid casual talk. No, I know this is common sense, but no cussing. You couldn't imagine how many candidates slip up and cuss in interviews with me, and I'm like, oh boy. So really, when you practice your answers, practice language, practice it sounding more professional and tight. Use strong keywords. And I would say the best keywords to use are those that are reflective of the job description. If it asks for certain job experience, if it asks for leadership qualities, make sure that when you're representing your answers back, you are honing in on the keywords. I am a huge proponent of using AI for interview prep. And so one of the best things you can actually do is take the job description and paste it into Chat GPT or Copilot, whatever you used to using, and ask, what are the key things that this role is looking for? What are the key questions I should be prepared to answer? And so I would say that can really highlight for you the strong keywords, the strong phrases you want to make sure are embedded into your interview questions. Use positive body language, whether that's you're doing a virtual interview or you're in person. You really want to mirror the style of the interviewer. So have a smile, make good eye contact, use appropriate gestures. Sitting with a confident posture is very important and comes across very evident in an interview, even if it's virtual. Stay confident, even if you get a little rattled, even if you have a question you don't know the answer to. Make sure to keep your poise and your focus. If you don't know the answer to a question or you need time to think about that, it is absolutely okay to say, "Can you give me a second? I want to think about that for a second." If they're asking you a situational question where you're unsure of how you want to answer or which example you want to use, have some notes on hand, especially if it's virtual. Give me do you mind if I take a second to think this through? Um, Seeking feedback is always helpful, and whether that's directly from the interviewer at the end of the time, whether you're doing it live in the interview, is there any feedback you have for me from our conversation? A lot of people will give you off the cuff feedback. You can, when you're preparing with friends and mentors, you can ask for feedback from them as well. Use it for your resume, use it for your interview style, use it for how you answered questions. One of the things I always like to do after I've been asked and answered a question is, did I did I hit everything you wanted me to discuss? Is there anything else that I have failed to mention? And that way you can, did I get to the crux of your question, or do you need more information? So I think that's always a good pause, and letting them kind of have a two-way conversation from your answer. And then follow up. I would say one of the best things you can do is send a thank you note after every interview and interaction that you have. And that's just simply, "Thank you so much for your time today. I had a pleasure speaking with you." Remind them of something you might have discussed. They could have interviewed 8 candidates that day. So I really appreciate you sharing about your personal situation as it was reflected in the culture of the company. Um, and make sure that when you reply, you give them your phone number and your email address in that thank you note. And then I would say, lastly, be yourself. So be authentic. Bring your true, authentic self. Your resume jumped out at the page. Now you want to bring it to life. You want to be authentic. You want to showcase your personality. Um, it's okay to be, enthusiastic, geek out about a topic. They want to see you fully engaged and fully authentic about whatever you're discussing. It's very helpful if you know yourself. Do an audit before any interview. Know what your strengths are. Know what your weaknesses are. What are your best achievements? Make sure you have a note of your brags. You know, what was your best subject? What was the coolest thing you've accomplished so far? What are you most proud of personally and professionally? Have those things ready to go. And talk about your goals, your long-term goals, your short-term goals, your goal for that role, especially if it's an internship or a new position. I would say highlighting unique experiences is really helpful. Share how kind of your diverse background and experiences contribute to your abilities and your perspectives, something that would make you, again, unique versus other candidates. And then that there's kind of the art and science of telling a compelling story, um, a story that really demonstrates your skills, your experiences, your accomplishments, but also weaves in who you are authentically. Before I move into the next section, anyone have any questions, thoughts? Anyone recently interview and have kind of your own uh, interactions with these notes? Anything I'm missing? Maya, anything you would add?
No, I mean, I think these are all the main things.
Okay.
Nothing else I
Well,
can
there
think
are
of.
two questions that they will always ask you, and I want you to be prepared. I want you to have a 90-second response. Tell me about yourself. This is the first question they're going to ask. They have your resume in front of you. They're going to say, tell me about who you are. I have your resume. I can see don't walk them through your resume step by step. Tell them who you are, full picture on your resume, off your resume. If there's something not on your resume that you're really proud of, also bring that into the story. This is the question that breaks the ice. This is the question that gets them excited to be speaking to you. So they're always going to ask me, tell me about yourself in some version. And they're always going to ask you, why do you want this job? What stood out to you? Why did you apply? What stood out for you about this role? So have some answers on why you're applying for that role. Like, make sure you have the job description printed off in front of you. Make sure you have your resume printed off in front of you. Make sure you even have a small script of tell me about yourself. I just started this job after 25 years in another job. last year, and I worked on a 2 minute elevator pitch of my last 25 years of work experience. So that when, and every interview I had, they said, tell me about yourself. And I had it down. I had, an anecdote. I knew where to hit the emphasis and the story. You really want to have that elevator pitch, if you will. If you were to get on an elevator with the CEO and they said, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you interviewing for my company today?" You could never imagine who you get on an interview with, on an elevator with when you're going to an interview. You need to be able to say that story with conviction, with charm, and really be your authentic self. So be prepared and practice those two questions. Tell me about yourself and why do you want this job? And so I would write those down and I would really have good, solid answers to those. All right. One of the things I want to kind of impart on you is so many places are really used to a very structured response to questions. You will be asked questions, very structured interview questions in every interview you do. And you could see them, some of them will be situation or opinion based questions. So these are hypothetical scenarios designed to get you to focus on how you might handle a situation. So these are things like, what is your greatest strength? Or what would you do in this situation you may have never faced before? So it's a hypothetical situation. The second type of question that could come your way are behavioral questions. And so these are designed to answer how you might handle real world challenges or how you have handled them in the past or will in the future. So think about questions like, tell me about a time when you struggled with completing a project, or give me an example of a time you overcame an obstacle. So those are questions you will get. And then lastly, you will likely get asked a competency based question, and that will really go to assess your skills and experience that are expected for the role. So give me an example of your leadership skills. Describe how you sought a creative solution for a recent problem you dealt with. So those are things that would be more job based. And again, I highly recommend that you take the job description, paste it into an AI model, and ask it, what questions can I expect based on this job description? And you can really practice your answers for that. You can even say, and we just did this as a team last week, how might I answer this based on my resume and the job description? How might I answer a question, the questions you've just told me they'll ask in the STAR method? And so the STAR method is situation, task, action, and response. And so situation, provide context for your example, kind of the setup to the story. Task, outline your responsibilities. Uh, Action, describe the action you took to complete the task. And then finally, result, which is the highlight of the outcome you achieved. And especially if there's an obstacle that you overcame. Everyone loves to hear that. So let me give you an example of this. Describe for me a situation where you had to work under pressure and meet a deadline. Has anyone been asked that question? I'm assuming your silence means yes, absolutely, many times. So the way to set this up would be, here's a good example. And here are things I have actually seen, especially when interviewing interns. During my first year project in college, we had a project that had a strict deadline to submit our research paper. And it was a team project. So you set up the situation, you describe kind of the situation. And two, what was your task? And you really want to be self-centered. Even if it was a team project, you really want to focus on what you did. And so our task was to conduct key experiments, analyze the data, and write a comprehensive report within a 1 month time frame. So you've described what you've been asked to do, how you've been asked to deliver it, and a time frame. Okay, then you're going to describe the action that you yourself took. So I took responsibility to create a detailed project plan with sub deadlines, prioritized tasks, and then I delegated those responsibilities amongst our team. So you want to make sure you describe what you did in the situation. And even here you can actually add in their, you know, one of my teammates was sick, one of which interrupted our action, one of the deadline changed. There was a break in school and we actually had to deliver this a week earlier than we thought. And then in the results, you want to highlight the outcome. So, despite facing unexpected challenges, such as equipment malfunction and underperforming teammates, we worked diligently to get back on track, and we submitted our paper ahead of schedule, earning both accolades and an A grade from the professor. So you want to show them all the way from the setup of the story to the actual delivery. And so that takes them nicely through. You will see that interviewers may interrupt you. Well, tell me a little bit more about the setup. How many teammates? You want it to be interactive. You want them to ask for details. Go through the story, pause, let them ask a question if they need to on the next setup. Okay. So it's kind of a quiet group, but last but not least, I don't know if I can call on anyone, if anyone would be interested in helping. But I would love for a volunteer, please and thank you, on like a practice question. And we can do this as a group, but I would love for you, how might you answer this question using the STAR model? Can you share an example of a time when you had to resolve a conflict within a team or with a colleague? I'm certain you faced this, whether this was recently in a school project, if this was over the summer at a summer job, if it was even in high school. I would love for you to reflect on this. And can I get a volunteer to help me? Maya, I'll call on you, I promise.
I can.
Thank you, Nani. So,
Um,
how would you first set up the situation? You've been asked this question.
so I had a group project for our client connected project in junior year of high school with American Century, actually. And I was on a group with two other students in my class, and we needed to come up with a solution for environmental progress at um, the company, and then deliver a presentation about that after a month and a half.
Okay.
And
What was the task? Yeah, you described that you set up the situation. What were the tasks that you had to accomplish?
um, finding a solution to the
Oh,
environmental
yeah. Okay. Yes.
problem.
Perfect. And then
Um,
what are the actions you took as a teammate?
um, making Doing research about what other companies have done and having interviews with um, people in that department about what's already being done at the um, company. And the teammates that I had on my team did not uh, abide by the deadlines that we had for our class, causing a lot of delays in the project and leaving a lot of the responsibility to me. But in the end, I had delegated a lot of the responsibility and we got the work done. And the um, people from the company who we presented to really liked the project, especially they pointed out my presentation and performance.
That's perfect. That's exactly how you would set that up. Thank you so much. Anyone's thoughts, comments, anything you guys would also add? I am going to stop sharing. It looks like we have had some more folks join. Are there questions? Is there any real life interview situations or questions you guys want to ask? Ask the expert, I guess. in my case. But I want to avail myself, it wasn't a, it was about a 30-minute presentation, but we have more time together. So I'd love to see if I can be helpful for any of you guys. Riley, Amanda, anything on your guys' mind? Are you guys preparing for interviews for the summer?
I am. I think the only question or like concern that I really had is that I'm going out for a position that I don't have much, like, it's not in my resume really. So, like, the jobs that I've worked don't really relate to what I'm going out for. But I know that, like, everyone says, like, oh, you're still in college. So, like, they'll understand that. But yeah.
I think one of the best ways to address that is in a cover letter. You can add with your resume, why the role is of interest to you, why it meets your future goals, really. If it's not experience you have, but it's something you're looking to study or grow in, I think mentioning that in the cover letter is really helpful.
Okay.
And
That
don't be afraid to apply to a bunch of things you don't have experience for, because you guys are like early college. You won't have a lot of experience for any of it, but I think being interested goes a long way.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I had a question. How do you go about talking about your strengths and weaknesses and knowing what to say instead of making it so generic?
Um, I think, there's always this pitfall, like I don't want to tell anyone what my weaknesses are. Don't make up a weakness really and just say, I'm still discovering. I think it's okay even at your age. I'm still learning what my strengths and weaknesses are. I would say, like I fully admit one of my weaknesses, and it's been my weakness for life, is I love big picture details. Really bog me like real like that's not my passion, and so I have to put extra time and attention to detail. And so I think saying I know what my weaknesses are and I work on them as much as I work on my strengths is the best answer you can say. Like I think that I have really good study habits. I think I'm a high achiever. Like I look to finish projects, those, talk about those sorts of strengths that you can actually showcase on your resume. I like if I start something, I finish it. I'm really dedicated. I think especially for, early in your career, kind of pre-graduation, those sorts of sense of accomplishments like that are very strong. Competitive drive. I like to get involved. I like to give back. I feel comfortable in leadership positions, even if there's, hard news to deliver. Those are all good strengths. And admitting like I work on my weaknesses as much as my strengths, I think will go a long way. It is, and everyone loves to ask that question. I really ask our interviewers not to ask that question because it's just kind of ick. I really like to take a strengths minded approach to interviews. So, but you'll get asked, what would you say is your biggest weakness and how do you overcome it? You should have an answer for that, for sure. Looks like I missed some questions. I like to ask what makes experiences unique. I I think, sorry, just going through the questions. Um, Things that might make you unique, like did you hold a leadership position? Did you play sports? Are you in a business or a social fraternity or sorority? Are you involved in the community within your church? Are there leadership opportunities? Are you passionate about something that a lot of people aren't passionate about? Like, are you passionate about saving us, like saving the environment? Bugs. I've interviewed people who are like have like interesting hobbies, things like that. Like, are you, and I think sometimes putting that on your resume at the bottom um, is really helpful too. It gives interviewers an opportunity to say, oh, I see that you won the spelling bee, like tell me about that experience, or anything that might just be a little bit like a good conversation starter. I think is really cool. Michael, you asked about compensation. I think one of the best things you can do is be open about what your compensation expectations are. A recruiter may or may not ask you about that in your first interview. What are your compensation expectations for the role? And so you can share what your expectations are. Did I did I get to that? I mean, I think it's you can say if you're in an interview and it's going well and you know that you've applied for a job, but it doesn't say what the salary expectations are, one of the best ways as a candidate to ask that are what do you guys have a budget for this role? I'm curious what the salary range is for this role. You can absolutely ask what the salary range is, and you can and or ask what is the budget. Many times a recruiter will say, what are your compensation expectations? And if you feel uncomfortable asking that, the best way to volley that back to the recruiter is to say, I'm not really sure based on the role and my experience, what would you say is the range for this role, and what is your budget? And so that's a way for them to give you a little bit more information before you have to actually give away your secret number. The three types of questions that you will be asked. Let me make sure I'm getting to that for you. So there are three types of questions you will be asked. The first is situational and opinion questions. So the things that are designed to get you to focus on how you might handle a situation. What would you do in this situation? What is your greatest strength? Behavioral questions. And so those are things that on how you might handle a real life situation that you have probably faced and will face in the role. So tell me about a time where you faced you faced a tricky teammate or overcoming an obstacle, those sorts of questions. Give me an example of a time where you had to influence to move a project forward. And then the third are competency questions. So those are be questions most closely tied to the role and what the role is looking for. So give me an example of your leadership skills. Describe how you sought a creative solution to a recent problem that, maybe it's in the tech industry. So something that might be more closely related to the role. Can environment I don't think the environment is any indicator. I think it is, an interest of time. Some of them can, like an interview can be virtual, so that there's no travel involved, or it can be managed more quickly versus in an office. I wouldn't read too much into if you've been invited to an interview, you've been invited to an interview, whether it's at a coffee shop or it's in an office. I would say the further along you get into an interview process, like an initial interview might be at a coffee shop or might be a kind of a phone call with a recruiter, like that's generally the first interview. The second interview will likely be with the hiring manager and will be virtual or in an office. And if some interviews, like for those of you guys who have been in the industry longer, those interview processes can be 4-5 interviews long, and the further you get, the more likely you are to be meeting with the team for your final interview in person in an office, and that could require travel.
I was actually going to ask, so some of our internship applicants will most of them will probably be doing Zoom interviews for their internships for the summer. What are some of like your key like tips for when you're doing a Zoom interview versus, doing a real life in-person interview?
No distractions in the background. Make sure you have good lighting, even if you don't have a lot of people use the kind of circle lights behind them so that they have good lighting. But I mean, you can rig up anything. You can rig up a makeup mirror. You can rig up your cell phone to make sure that it's providing some good light. So make sure you have good lighting. make sure you have a good, solid connection. Technically, you might test it out even to make sure, make sure you have a good connection. I have certainly interviewed students who are kind of in their union hall, the university hall, and there's tons of noise and they're always distracted. I would not suggest that. I would really find a quiet place. I would call dibs on your room if you have a roommate and see if, hey, I have an interview for 12 to 1. Can I use the room? Book a space at the, in a lot of the schools or the libraries have rooms where you can actually, the career services center have rooms where you can take an interview. I would absolutely recommend that. Or, if you're close to home, go home and do it there. I have had moms and grandmas definitely walk in on interviews. For any of you guys who've met our lovely former campus recruiter, Trey Watts, his grandmother came into my interview with him 3 times to ask if he wanted lunch. It was charming, but he was pretty embarrassed. So you want to make sure you at least explain it. He said, my grandma does not understand that I'm on an interview. She is going to walk in this room, and she did 3 times. So if there's a situation with her, there's going to be a small child here, I apologize in advance. Anything you can do to make sure it's not a surprise to the interviewer or to yourself if something's going to happen, but find a nice quiet space if you can. But ever since COVID, we're all in a virtual world. Things happen. I certainly, my daughter is home from school and she has called me no less than 10 times on her little gizmo watch while we're on this call, just trying to get my attention. I think she probably wants a snack, which she can get. My husband works from home. I don't know why she's calling me, but these things happen. What else? Anything else on your guys' mind? Anything else in the chat?
Okay, well, I guess if there are no more questions, we'll end this portion of the interviewing workshop. So thank you so much, Lauren, for
Yeah.
talking on and giving us all these great tips and advice. Definitely want to make sure that students are um, ready for any sort of interviews, and our professional older alumni as well for their going processes and things. And then I did want to have Tamara Gibson, she's our scholarship programs director, just have a quick shout out real fast. We have an upcoming alumni event, so just making sure everyone knows that it's happening.
Hello. I was going to do it from my computer, but it was really dark and I wanted to take some of her advice and have good lighting. So
you have great lighting and you did not 30 seconds ago.
So, hey, everybody. I see some familiar faces. Hey. Anyway, so I wanted to invite you all. I don't know if you've been getting the emails, the text messages, all of the information that's been on Instagram, on Facebook, that we are having our 2nd annual Alumni Awards Banquet. And so this is a really amazing thing for us to just celebrate all the amazing accomplishments and just cool things that alumni are doing who are a part of, who are at UA. And so there are a few things. So it's $20. It is at Lula Southern Cookhouse, which the food is really, really good. You guys know there because you had prom there. Mm-hmm. So we'll be there. That pays for your food and also a soda for you all to drink because all that good stuff anyway. But it's going to be a fun time. You also get a raffle ticket, and we aren't just raffling off like something simple. We're going to be doing an Apple product, so you want to be there for that. The class that has the most amount of alumni present at the event, if you're there, you're going to get a gift card. And so if you guys bring a couple of your friends, if you have 8 people from your class, we're going to give you all gift cards. So you want to do that as well. And if you come this year, the next year, if you pay for your ticket, you can bring somebody for free. So we have some cool things going on. Again, it is on December the 19th. That is on a Thursday. It's going to be at 5:30 p.m. And so we really want you guys to be there. Can we we'll put the link in there.
Throwing it in there now.
For you all to come. And it's going to be a fun time. I'm hoping to see a lot of y'all. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Tamara. Okay, great. So I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to RSVP for that. Please do. It's going to be a good time. And yeah, that's all we had for today. Oh, and then I am doing a raffle for one of our lucky alumni that is on the call. I have it in like a spin the wheel thing, so I'm gonna have it spin the wheel. I don't know if you guys can like hear it. Do do do. All right, Jalen Newsom is our winner. Where's she at? I just saw her. There she is. Hey, so Jalen, you won a gift card for today. Thank you so much. And then Jalen's at Talladega College in Alabama, also applying for internships for the summer.
Awesome. Well,
And
thank you guys for your time. Happy holidays. It was good being with you. Good luck with finals and good luck getting prepped for interviews.
and then if anyone has any other questions, we'll just email them to me or text them to me, and then I'll send them to Lauren and we'll go from there. So thank you all for
Absolutely.
coming. Have a good evening. Bye.